Hello everyone and welcome to another really awesome game from round 5 of the 2021 FIDE World Cup. It's Vasif Durarbayli of Azerbaijan versus Vidit, and it's one of those games that features a piece that's kind of useless. Also, sometimes a piece can be a great piece, but sometimes, it can be worse than a pawn, and this is one such game. It's a very, very sad piece, could also be characterized as a miserable piece. You'll see what I mean by this, and it's a really, it's a beautiful game. So without further ado, let's check it out and see why so many of you suggested it. So Durarbayli with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5 now. Going for the Ruy Lopez, we have a6, bishop to a4, and now knight to f6. So the Columbus variation of the Morphy's defense. We have castles, and now b5. We have bishop to b3, and now bishop to c5. So a very popular line nowadays. We have a4 attacking the flank, and now rook to b8. And there are many popular moves here. For white, c3 is the most popular. You could also capture here, but there is also one very cool move, and that is knight captures on e5. So a temporary piece sacrifice, but as you can imagine, when the knight captures on e5, we're going to play d4 and attack the bishop and the knight. So here we have knight captures and d4, and now black wins the pawn back by bishop captures on d4. We have queen captures, now attacking the knight here, and d6, simply defending the knight. We have bishop to f4. f4 is also very popular here. Here Durarbayli goes for bishop to f4, and now c5, getting a lot of expansion here. We have queen to e3, and now c4. So attacking the bishop here, we have bishop to a2, and now there are a couple of games that reach this position. The most notable one being Svidler versus Aronian from the this year's Grand Chester in Paris. They played the Blitz game where Aronian defeated Svidler, and he castled here. Basically, all of the games that reach this position featured castles here, but instead of castles, Vidit goes for knight to h5, and it is only now, as of move 13, that we have a completely new game. So basically, he's asking, do you want to trade the bishop here, or do you want to trade the bishop like this for me to capture it? Here we have knight to c3, continuing development, and now knight captures on f4, queen captures, and Vidit just castles. We have a captures on b5, a captures on b5, and now, well, the question is, how do you get this bishop into the game? It's going to be very hard because, well, this structure here is not going to move. So basically, what you could do is maybe move the rook, play bishop b1, move the knight somewhere, and then play c3, and then the bishop will be staring at this e4 pawn for who knows how long. So that's maybe one of the possible scenarios. But here we have rook 8 to d1, bishop to e6 by Vidit, and now bishop back to b1. And here Vidit has a really, really awesome plan, and he starts executing it with b4. So he attacks the knight here, says, do you want to go to d5 or do you want to go back to e2? And the problem is, if knight to d5, we can just trade, because white already has one piece that he can never use. So why not, trade as many pieces as we can? And then, imagine if we trade everything off and we're left with one piece, this beautiful knight on e5, and the white is stuck with this bishop. It's like we're up a piece. So definitely makes sense. So instead, after this b4 move, we have knight to e2. Durarbayli wants to keep all of his, useful pieces on the board. And now queen to b6. So what do you play here? The problem is you can't really unwind with c3. I mean, you could play it, but for example, captures, and now what do you play here? Let's say bishop g4 by black, and it's a really, really bad position for white. It's very, very hard to play this. Not a lot of active moves for white. So instead, we have h3, taking away the g4 square from Vidit, and now comes c3. And this is such a beautiful move because it basically forces white to choose between two options that are just bad. So here, best for white is to just play b3, but who does this? If you're a human, you do not play this and, create this tomb for your light square bishop. No one plays this. So instead, after c3, we have b captures on c3, but now comes a move that Vidit had in mind, a very nice solution zug. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find this idea. Think very carefully while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the move, but not just on finding the move, but rather calculating it all the way, because it's not the same thing. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop to c4. Here, Vidit's bishop is just showing off how it's a really, really awesome piece, how it's very active. You know, everyone is just applauding this bishop for a job well done, whereas this bishop, well, you get where I'm going. So the knight is attacked, and what are you gonna play? You can't move the knight, otherwise you lose the rook on f1. So rook f to e1, defending the knight, and now we simply remove the defender of the c3 pawn. Bishop captures, rook captures, and now b captures on c3. And now comes the punchline. Here the bishop cannot move. If the bishop goes to a2, then queen a6 wins the game, as white will lose a piece. You attack the bishop and the rook here. So here we have rook back to e1, white hoping to get this bishop to a2 move in, but Vidit just plays rook to a8, and he says, nope, that bishop is staying there on b1. So queen to g3, attacking the c3 pawn, now just rook to c8. And now, how can white continue this? It's not a very active position, and you know black's plan is just to bring the knight to c4 and then to d2, and then white will have a useless bishop and two useless rooks. So that's pretty terrible. So here we have king to h2, trying to get this f4 move in to kick away this knight and maybe start with some f5, f6 ideas. Maybe we can checkmate the black king. But now rook to a3, adding another defender here. Of course, black knows that white will do some rook lifting here, and it's a very useful move, as you'll see, because now we have rook to e3, and the point is, if you play well, not a very useful move here. We're just gonna kick away the knight, and then the knight cannot come to c4 because rook captures here. This will no longer be defended. So instead, after rook to e3, Vidit just plays queen to b4, adds another defender to the c3 pawn. Now knight to c4 to d2 is definitely happening, and also the queen just defends this pawn, so that's also very nice. Unfortunately, you can't do a nice rook to d5 rook lift, because then the bishop hangs, so there's also that. So here we have f4, but now knight to c4. Now we can play it. The rook here is under attack, and you don't really gain anything by moving the rook. Like I said, the knight is coming to d2. It's just a terrible position for white. So white instead goes queen g4, as the rook here is not defended, but now rook to b8. We have rook to g3, now threatening checkmate, now g6. And here we have f5 by Durarbayli, now trying to bust open the position a little bit, but it's going to be very hard. You don't have... If the light square bishop could help with the attack, it'd be great, but... yeah. So here Vidit goes knight to d2, and now already that's a really bad bishop. That rook isn't really doing anything. The queen and rook here are really bad, but not just that, you're just threatening to win the game by winning this piece. So here capturing doesn't really do anything. Like we said, there's no way to continue the attack. So here we have queen to f4, now trying to maybe stir some trouble here, because maybe if, let's say, well, there's nothing that you can do. If knight captures on e4, maybe we can do that. Then maybe you can play something like rook g to d3 and then gain some activity. But Vidit, of course, not interested in ruining his setup. His knight is just beautiful there. He just plays queen to d3, a very nice centralizing move. And now white has to be really careful. Because, well, the queen is now eyeing that rook, and maybe if the knight moves, delivers a check, we could maybe win some material here. But you can't do it right away. A rook to d3 here is kind of a possibility, but then we just play queen e5, we trade the queens, and white cannot afford to trade any active pieces, because most of his pieces are bad, and if you trade off active pieces, you're left with nothing to play with. There's this rook, and that's it. That's all white has. So instead, after queen d4, we have f captures on g6. Okay, Vidit captures back, h captures on g6, and now rook to g5. And now, well, what do you play here? I know a lot of you guys want to play knight to f3 check and pick up this rook, but you can't. Queen captures on f3, defends the rook, so, don't do that. So after rook to g5, we have rook to a1. You could also just go and grab a piece here, but Vidit likes to prepare it properly, so he just goes rook to a1, adds another attacker, and there's nothing white can do. We have rook to d5 here. But just queen captures on e4. There's no playing this. Queen captures on d6, now attacking the rook here, but now just rook a captures on b1. Also defends the rook here, and that's it. There's nothing more white can play. A few moves more were played. Rook to d4, now queen to e6, offering a queen trade. We have queen to c7, but now comes queen to b6 by Vidit, and it was in this position on move 38 that Vasif Durarbayli resigned the game, and as the first game ended in a draw and Vidit won the second game, this means that Vidit is the second player to enter the quarterfinals alongside Sam Shankland, and the other 6 players will have to go into tiebreaks tomorrow to decide matters between them. So congratulations to Vidit on such a spectacular game, really just destroying that light square bishop. And here, okay, you resign, you're down material, and there's nothing you can do. If you trade queens, we're just going to play rook captures on b6, and if rook captures, I mean, we're up a knight here. It's not really something you can play. But what was the most fascinating, I think, about this game is that how quickly it happened. From this moment where we said that Aronian played against Sviller, this castles move, Vidit had this all of this planned. So eliminate White's dark square bishop and just leave him with this terrible light square bishop, which is so sad because the light square bishop in the Ruy Lopez is such a powerful piece. If you remember all the Bobby Fischer games that we've covered, what how powerful of a piece the light square bishop in the Ruy Lopez can be. People develop it to b5, sometimes they bring it all the way to a4 to b3, sometimes they shift it all the way back to f1 and then use it later on to do great things. But here it is just amazing. I think we could agree that this definitely was the worst bishop ever. There are many more bad bishops, but it's a really a high rated game, so I think between two such high rated gentlemen that this bishop is well the worst. I could be wrong, but tell me your thoughts, and maybe you have a game that you figure that has a worse bishop. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mika Kennedy, Michael Calber, Tom Derolo, Michael J. Wood Writing, and Daniel Hallback for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE World Cup, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. We're going to be covering the tie breaks tomorrow. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.